Hello and welcome to another adventure here on my channel. Today I'm going to be choosing the 10 palettes I would keep if I could only keep 10 eyeshadow palettes. So if you like playing with makeup and talking about the beauty community / industry just as much as I do, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you'll be notified of all future content. Now, I've seen this video going around YouTube for a while now and I just finally decided to do it myself. I think the last person I personally watched do this video was Butte Bean, so I'll have her video linked down below in the description, as well as any of the other YouTubers I like who have done this video. I will try to find them. I do not know who started this style of video, I am sorry. And I know saying if I could only keep 10 palettes can sound a tiny bit ridiculous because I feel like most people probably have less than 10 eyeshadow palettes and function just fine as a human being. But as a beauty YouTuber, this was a little bit of a challenge. It was interesting. It was not as much a challenge to me as some other YouTubers, I think, because my collection for a YouTuber's collection, a makeup YouTuber's collection, is rather small. I have 32 palettes, which saying that is kind of small, relatively. So it was a little bit easier because I got to choose like basically a third of my collection, but it was still really fun to do and it was easier than I thought it would be. Because once I decided to do it, I kind of just walked right up to my collection and looked at my palettes and it felt like my brain just made a whole bunch of really fast calculations and I just grabbed like the first 7 and was like, okay, these 7, absolutely. Then it was like, okay, looking at what I have here, what palette would add the most variety? Oh, know exactly what it is, this one. Okay, what formula do I really not want to be without? There was a couple of palettes and I chose based on color story that I thought I would like the best. Boom, done. And I was like, okay, I have 9 palettes. This is awesome. I have just one free palette that I feel like I just get to keep another one that I just happen to like. And that was when it got difficult because I was like, this is the last palette. I don't know why I'm the person that takes this so seriously, as if someone really is going to come and take away all the palettes I don't choose. I know that's not going to happen, but I am the person that takes would you rathers way too seriously. So I went back and forth of like, well, this palette adds more variety, but I really like this palette, but I like this formula, but this one offers more colors, but so much. And that was the one that I was like, okay, I don't know, but I finally made a decision and I'm really happy with the decision I made, even though I think it is not what a lot of people would expect of me. So before we dive on into this video, if you do know a little bit about my collection, what palettes I own after watching my channel for a while, put down in the comments your guesses as to what you think is absolutely 100% in these 10 palettes sitting next to me right now that are my 10 I would choose if I could only keep 10. But remember that this is not necessarily my top 10 eyeshadow palettes because I think if I did a ranking, all of these would rank fairly high, but I don't think it would be my top 10 because not only did I have to pick how much I enjoy these palettes, I had to think about flexibility and how much use I could get out of them, what each one adds to my collection, what not choosing some of my all-time favorites would mean, etc, etc. So just because these are my top 10 I would keep doesn't necessarily mean they're my top 10 favorites, so keep that in mind with your guesses. But with that, I'm gonna assume you have already paused and taken your guesses. Let's jump right on in. And like I said, the first 7 were really easy. I just kind of grabbed them and I knew these would be them. And the first 5 of those first 7 were my 5 ColourPop palettes, which may be surprising because I like ColourPop, but it's not like I particularly absolutely love ColourPop and love their eyeshadow formula. They do have a really solid eyeshadow formula on their palettes that are good. I've noticed they've gotten a little hit and miss, which is weird because they used to be like the most consistent brand ever, but anyway, I'm not a huge like, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with ColourPop, but half of my 10 palettes would be my 5 ColourPop palettes just because I feel like it is a good formula. Just so much of what I like to do in my eyeshadow is represented in these 5 palettes. First, I would choose the Hocus Pocus Gather Round Sisters palette, which yes, this is my newest eyeshadow palette. I do think that partially plays a role that I'm excited about it. It's new, it's Hocus Pocus, and I love Hocus Pocus, but this color story adds so much to my collection, this small, relatively small eyeshadow collection of what I like in eyeshadow, is in this palette. I have cool tone neutrals, I have warm tone neutrals, I have some pops of color, I have greens, which is one of my favorite pops of color, I have reds, another of my favorite pops of color, and some purples, which the rest of these palettes really don't have a lot of purple in them. So a little bit of purple. It is just a really flexible, good, solid, staple, like everyday go-to palette with some pops type of palette for me. So even though this is Hocus Pocus and my newest palette, I think if it was not Hocus Pocus and not my newest palette, it would still be one of my choices because of the color story itself, how much I just vibe with this color story. Then my Whatever palette, which again is a pretty new palette to my collection, but this is just the perfect fall eyeshadow palette for me. And honestly, even though this is a fall palette, I would use this all year. This gives me so much to play with. I've really been getting into these warm neutrals, and while this offers me some softer warm neutrals, I can really amp it up. Also, even though I wasn't expecting this, I thought I would love the shade Not Okay and Tardy most for the shimmers in this palette. My favorite shade in this palette is Ditching You. This is one of my favorite shades in my collection. When I want to go for orange eyeshadow, this is what I've been wanting to reach for. It's just so multi-dimensional and beautiful as a shimmer. It's not as like pumpkin spicy warm as the shade Not Okay, but they're both just such beautiful orange shimmers. So with this, I would be able to do my pumpkin spice space princess looks, which I have been loving. I have some neutrals, I can do some softer looks, I can do some orangey looks, I can do some burgundy looks. Like, this offers me so much and what I've really been into. And even though this is pretty new to my collection, I pretty much have not stopped using it since I got it. So this, absolutely. And then my All That palette. And I did think, well, if I have the Whatever palette, do I really need the All That too? Because they're not identical, but you can tell there's some family resemblance. They both lean into those warm, burgundy, reddy tones. But for me and the looks I like to do, these are two very different palettes in my collection, because this palette I get warm neutrals, I get oranges, I get burgundies, and this I get pinks and reds. And I love red eyeshadow. I love pink eyeshadow, and this is just the perfect red monochromatic, almost monochromatic palette. But I just love pink and red looks so freaking much. This, and the third one I'm about to show you are like the best ColourPop formula. So I'm really happy to have these three in my mini 10 palette collection here. And this would represent all the red looks I could ever want to do. And like, my favorite colors that I would need to have in my collection are neutrals, reds, yellows, greens, oranges. Especially neutrals. I also really like grays, but those are the things I really go for. So this would give me all the reds and pink looks that I want to do. And then the next one is my Good as Gold, which, while this is themed around gold and it does have a lot of golds in here, to me, this is the yellow palette. This is the yellow representation in my collection. I do have a few other yellows scattered throughout these palettes, but this would be that all yellow palette I could go for, because this is a yellow, this is a yellow, this is more yellow than gold, this is more yellow than gold. But I do like gold eyeshadow, so this gives me yellows and golds, and it's a beautiful formula. I really enjoy this. Also, just practicality wise, this is the palette I do Emmy's look from, if you saw that video, and me being my economy character, which I do want to do in more videos and make her kind of a regular appearance on my channel. So I would want to have the palette that I get her look from. I know I could do it with something else, but I just really like it, and I really like this palette, and I love yellows, so this has earned its spot. And then finally, the last ColourPop palette that I would choose and that I own is the Smoke Show palette, because this is just such a cool freaking palette. When this came out, I was just like, yes, absolutely 100%. And I reached for this, even though I will do one look just all with this palette and get a beautiful gray silver smoky eye when I want to. Whenever I'm building interesting looks, whenever I'm doing something different, I find myself reaching for this palette. And like, I am the person that I do not like to reach into different palettes, except if I really want to play and I really have like a specific look in mind, then I will go into different palettes. And this is just the palette that I am always reaching into when I want something different. Like, I don't reach for this all the time, but when I need it, I am so glad I have it. Also, as someone who just loves cool tones and grays, I do love having this color story in my collection. I just think it's so unique, so pretty, so cool, and I would not want to be without it, even in a smaller collection, even if it's not something I would reach for all the time. It's special enough, it's different enough, it's fun enough for me to absolutely want this. And then after the first 5 ColourPop palettes, there were 2 other palettes that I instantly went, yes, those 2 have to be in this 10 palette collection. And the first one was the Soph X Revolution Extra Spice palette. This is my favorite eyeshadow palette that I own. I am willing to say that. In my mind, it was crowned a long time ago, but this has almost everything I love, all the colors I love to work with, except cool tone neutrals. That's the only thing this is missing. There is neutral shades, there is orangey shades, there's a yellow, there's a red, there's some greens. Like, I love every color in here. I love every color in here together. This is my most used palette. It is my favorite palette, and I absolutely would not want to go without it. So love, love, love this. And if I was doing a ranking all my eyeshadows palette video, which I do want to do fairly soon, sorry for spoilers, but this will be the number 1. And then the last one I grabbed that I was like, yes, I absolutely have to have that, is the one I can least articulate why. It's just a palette I really, really like, that I really gravitate to. It's not particularly special, even in my collection, but there's just something I absolutely love about the Revolution Life on the Dance Floor VIP palette. Unfortunately, you cannot get this anymore. It has been discontinued. I even think I got mine after it was discontinued. I bought it at Marshall's for like $5, and I love this palette. This is such a good everyday staple go-to type of palette. There are some cool tones, there are some warm tones, there are some really true neutral shades in here, and these shimmers, I feel like a lot of people would not enjoy because it feels like the beauty community is really going for like those extreme, super shiny, super dimensional, super pigmented type of shimmers, and these are not that. These are pretty basic, average shimmer shades. Like, they're nice and I can build them up a little bit and get them a little more intense, but it will never be JD glow shadows. It will never be super amazing, oh my gosh, shimmers from this palette, but I like that. I do not like a super intense metallic all the time. In fact, I usually shy away from it. There are some palettes that I genuinely love the color story, but I almost never reach for them because the shimmers are just too intense for my everyday liking. And this is perfect for that. I love the packaging. I think it's super cute. I really like this palette. I don't know quite how to articulate why this is so special to me and why it deserves a spot and why it was one that I was instantly like, yes, that is going in this collection. I do not want to be without it, but it did, and I love it, and I don't know if you'll be able to get it. I'm sorry that you're not, if it's something you're interested in, but if you see it at Marshall's, it's worth taking a look at. I really enjoy it. And then looking at those 7 palettes, I was like, okay, what am I missing? What will add the most variety to this collection? And that was an easy choice. The Revolution X Tammy Carnival palette, my perfect rainbow palette. I did a 3-day long search. I will link the video down in the description, the quest for the perfect rainbow palette, and I stand by that this is the perfect rainbow palette, and it would just add so much to the collection I have already built here, because basically any fun, colorful shades that I was feeling that I did not have in those 7 palettes would be in here. Also, the shade Calypso and the shade Notting Hill are 2 of my favorite shades in my entire collection. Something about the tones. These are a little more intense than the shimmers in the VIP palette, so they are more of a pop. They're not amazing metallics, but they are beautiful and more intense than the other ones. I really don't need any more rainbow palettes because I have this one, and that would be true in this 10 palette collection. So this made logical sense as the 8th choice, and I am so glad that it made it in because it is a truly, truly beautiful, really good palette. The perfect rainbow palette, and I stand by that. I know it's a lot of Revolution, but I really like Revolution palettes and ColourPop palettes, so. And after that, I was like, okay, what formulas do I truly love to work with? Because I really like all of these formulas, but they're not my favorite formulas. They're not what I'm just like, I gotta reach for that because it's so nice to work with. And there were a few palettes that fell into that category. And the formulas that really stood out to me that are my favorite formulas to work with are my Big Norvina palettes, my Kaleidos palette, and my Nabla palette. So I knew I wanted to choose one of those 4 palettes just to keep a really special formula in my collection. And I really didn't debate all that much and ended up choosing the Kaleidos Sci-Fi Green palette. It just made sense to me because I love reaching for this, and out of those 4 palettes, this is the one I reach for the most because this is a very me color story. I love going for grungy greens. I love going for that Pumpkin Spice Space Princess. This palette is where I got the phrase Pumpkin Spice Space Princess, which I feel like is kind of my brand now. And this formula is just wonderful. These mattes work so well. They're so smooth. They blend like butter. They're like the right level of pigmentation. The shimmers are really special. I said I don't really go for really special shimmers all the time, which is true, but having a couple that I can really amp up a look with, maybe do a more holiday festive look with these two shimmers is nice. So this adds a lot to my collection formula wise, and obviously in this 10 palette collection would continue to reach for this a lot. I mean, I reach for this a lot when I have 30 palettes. Nothing says it would change when I would only have 10. And that is when things got difficult, because I was like, one more palette, what is it? I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and I just couldn't figure it out. And then finally I made this decision and I was like, yes, that feels right. And this is cheating a little bit, I know, but I would choose my 2 L'Oreal Gold Mirage shadows, which I think is fair, even though it's technically 2 products. There are more shades in literally any palette I could have chosen. So I think that justifies keeping both of them in this scenario. And you may be like, why the heck would you choose 2 single shadows, less amount of shadows, rather than a palette where you could have up to, I think my biggest palette is like 39 shades. Why would I give that up? And it's because these are just so special to me, and they add a different kind of variety to this collection. Because not only are these just really special, gorgeous shades, again, since most of the shimmers in this collection are not really lackluster, but not that really intense, shiny, metallic, wet looking, different type of shimmer shades, these are. They really make the eyelid look wet and beautiful, and they're so sparkly and pretty. So these again would be very good for like a holiday look or a topper shade if I just want to amp up a look with any of the other palettes. But also, these are my lazy girl shadows. These are when I just want to put some, you know, BB cream, some concealer, a little bit on the lid, mascara, lip gloss, be done type of look. These are what I go to, and I know that because that's what I did all summer. They're sleek, they're compact, I can carry them around. Like if I need to throw some makeup in a bag and take it somewhere, I mean, not this year, but in this hypothetical situation in the future when I could go places, if I just wanted to throw these into a little makeup bag so I would have something to do eyeshadow with, like they are perfect for that. So I am really happy with that decision. I think looking at these palettes sitting next to me, I am sure I would not change them. If I could only keep 10 eyeshadow palettes, I would be sad to give up the rest of them, but this is a really good, full, well-rounded collection for me and my taste, and it gives me room to play. It gives me room to do like cosplay makeup, and all the way to just like boring bitch, I don't want to do shit makeup. And overall, I'm just really happy with this. I think it's well-rounded, and it is very much my style in a more curated collection than I actually own. Does that mean I'm gonna get rid of everything else? No, because I do genuinely like all my palettes. Like I do not keep palettes I do not really enjoy, but I could be okay. I know, so dramatic that I'm like, I could be okay with 10 eyeshadow palettes, which is more than most people have, but makeup's my hobby and I enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your answers to this if you feel like you actually want to type out 10 palettes, or at least tell me like a couple that you're sure would be in your 10 if you could only keep 10. Let me know down in the comments if you guys are interested in seeing a full collection palette ranking video soon, or if there are any other of these like eyeshadow palette challenges, what if things that you would like me to do. I would absolutely love to know. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.